And the more important thing, of course, is interesting, like what Hafiz has said just now. But other than that, there's also public gain for good for mankind, advanced knowledges, and share work with the art with your peers and things like that. Those are legit concerns. I guess the important one is this: the science does matter, right? Remember, publication is just a way for us to communicate the science, right? So it's the science that matters. So nowadays, I come across too many occasions in which people keep emphasizing on the papers. The top management also put in papers as a KPI. It's almost like a sword hanging on top of our head, right? So we just blindly pursuing papers output, but forgetting about those papers. The ultimate aim is to communicate science. So there's science that matters. And there's one point actually I have brought out in my last lectures, and I would like to bring it out again. I guess it's about accountability. We especially those who are fortunate enough to work in the university, because nowadays in Malaysia it's getting harder and harder to get a university lecture position. So for those of us who are very fortunate, like me, Dr. Fitri, very fortunate work in the university, we are not only fortunate enough to get the pay, so we are paid to doing our hobby, our interest, right? So we're doing research, people paying us for doing research. And in fact, the government also give us money to buy toys to play our interest, right? All the research grant, all the microscope, all the facilities is actually paid by the taxpayer. And all those are hard-earned money by general the common folk. And I think one of the important things is if we are just keep having our hobby, playing our toys in the lab without publishing, that means without actually sharing our finding with the general public, then there's no any gain from our research activities. So people keep paying us, but at the end, there's no any gain out from the resources that spent on this. So I guess one of the really important reason why we want to publish is for accountability purposes, because we have the funder, we have the university that pay us, and I guess those are our work, right? An output of our work. So I guess it is a very important message in which the accountability is important. I keep remind not only my student, also myself, right? Doing research is interesting, but there's the responsibility come with this as well. All right. So if you really look at it, right, why publish? The first to publish a view or finding, not the first to discover it, tend to get the most of the credit for the discovery. You might be the first to observe something, you could be the first, right? I give a very simple examples. In 2000, I believe in 2006, one professor, Vicky Colvin from Rice University, she published one paper in Science magazines. When she published this paper in Science magazine, she's talking about a very peculiar observation in which the very small magnetic nanoparticles at exactly my area, 4 nanometer, can be separated easily by using a handheld magnet. For those who work on these magnetic nanoparticles, this is not something too special. In fact, we observe it on the daily basis, right? But she is the first one to talk about it and why it is so surprised. It is such a surprise result, and she do an analysis on it and things like that, right? So I'm sure Vicky, she's not the first one who actually observed such phenomena in the lab, but she's the first one to publish this. And that paper actually gets cited 1,000 times on Science magazines, go into Science. So I guess of course, there's a lot of message coming out from it, but I just want to emphasize on it. If you are the first one to observe, but you are not publishing it, then your contribution is equal to 0, right? So it's anchoring with what Whiteside say. Interesting and unpublished is equivalent to non-existent, right? You can do the most interesting science in the world, but if you didn't write it out, not necessarily published in journal, but if you didn't really write it in the public domain, then sharing this kind of finding with other people, then it's non-existent. You are the only one who learned from it, or you and your student, or your student, if your student, you and your advisor is the one that know it, not other people, then if that's the case, it's non-existent to outside world, right? So those are the really important message, right? And what is publishing? Of course, publishing is just a method to share the original works with the peers and publics. It's not just in the peer review publication. Sometimes you can write a blog, you can write on your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. But I want to remind all the, especially young students, be very careful about sharing your research finding on public domain like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Right. I know, especially I'm a student before, so I know exactly how the student feel. You've been suppressed by your advisor for months, keep asking you, chasing your bag, and keep asking you, where's the results, where are the results? And you keep going into a lab, doing experiment, and your experiment keep fail and 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 fail. Every time fail. Then out of one night, out of the blue, you got something out, a surprise. In fact, it's a really nice photo or a nice micrograph. You finally been able to synthesize the nanomaterial or whatever your advisor keep asking you to synthesize. And so you got a really nice result. The first thing is you want to declare victory, right? So what else? You just share it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. I would like to remind, especially the young student, please don't do it. Especially share your research result. Because especially for some journal, like Nature and Science, they'll consider it as published results, So when remember in the last lectures, I talking about signing talking a bit about agreement and things like that. I'll going through it very detailed in my next lectures. But the idea is this: when you want to publish, you need to sign an agreement with the publisher. And some publisher, they will take the result that have been made available, of course, freely available on public domain as published. And so you won't be able to publish this result anymore in some of top journals, especially if it is a breakthrough, right? I think especially it's a breakthrough, that's why you are so excited, you want to share with other people and declare victory. But be very careful when doing it. Especially do not share. You could describe something, but do not share your results, especially the photo, your graph, whatever it is. Do not share it on the public domain. This is considered as one form of publication as well. So be very careful about it. Right. So of course, the research sharing can take other form like presentation, poster, meeting, working papers, internet posting, media publicity, and things like that. Right. So those are considered as publications. So not necessarily just peer review journal as publications, but be very careful, especially when you publish on the public domain. Above journal is not considered, periodic publication, but you need to verify, right? Especially like what you say just now, some of the top journal, they actually they really do not accept those images, especially images that have appear as a public domain. They take it as one of the form of publication, right? I'm going to talk about it in my third lectures as well, and also how to get copyright clearance for such thing. All right, so here is the outline of the presentations. So today I'm going to talk about the paper anatomy very fast. I think most of the people who attend this is already a veteran, so at least have some experience in publications. Then later on, I'll talk about the white side way of structure our work to align, our blended work with the paper to be. Then I'm talking about writing a good research paper title, then constructing an abstract, graphical abstract, your keywords, paper submissions and reviewing process, and finally cover letter and the response to the reviewer. All right, let's talk about paper anatomy and which part is more important. Right, I've quickly gone through. I just wondering, do any one of you do not have any experience in publishing or writing a first paper? Can you put one? All right. So there's people who raise hand. Yes, there's some. Right. So as usual, like in our last lectures, 1 that means yes, 0 that means no. All right. So that's okay. Lucian say never. All right. All right. So all right. So no problem. Right. So let me go through really quickly. So if this is typically what we call the peer-reviewed articles that have been published by American Chemical Society, is Biomacromolecule is the journal name. So normally a journal, a typical research articles, right? When you gone through, when you download it online, it almost looks like this. It has the title, the authors, abstracts, and normally a graphical abstract. Graphical abstract normally is actually available online, right? And for these cases, you can see it is at the side of it. Then introductions follow with experimental methods, results. Then discussions. Then figures table is embedded within the result and discussions. Then come to conclusion. Then the final part, of course, acknowledgement, then references. Right. So these are very standard, right? Almost every single peer-reviewed journal, they follow this kind of structures, or somehow within these kind of structures. There's some journal that have a result and discussion as a two separated section. They first report the results without any discussion, then only follow with discussion. And some of them is just having one section, all the introduction methods, discussion result, everyone all in the single section. But you need to include all those things into it. Right? Even though they didn't break it down into section, but you still need to introduce your idea, then follow with methods, then result and discussion, whatever. So it's almost just a general flow, right? So the first thing is when I bring it out, because whenever I bring out just now, right, it's almost like linearly, right? It's follow with title, the author name, abstract, graphic, etc., blah, blah, blah. I follow sequences and things like that. But the first one I want to bring out is this. No one read linearly nowadays. The reason is pretty obvious, because everybody is so busy and there's so many papers published per day, right? Even in our own research area, there can be truckload of papers published a day, and nobody can finish all the papers being published, even in our own research area. It's almost impossible to come across every single paper in your own research area, right? It's very unlikely. We always miss a paper here and there, right? So the idea is no one read linearly. Nobody spend a lot of time to read one paper, right? So that's one thing. Print edition are not dominant anymore. They're now the internet versions, mobile devices available, and and people normally, before that, the old school, right? When I still remember in 1990s when I doing my undergraduate studies, I go to the library. Let's say I do work on this research area. I go to the library, I bring out the journal, then I check what is the journal inside, the paper inside. But nowadays, if I tell this to young people, the young people tell you belongs to museum. Now nobody will know. Young people won't. They will go to search engine directly. Like even Dr. Fritri just now, I think Dr. Fritri is like one generation younger than me. But Dr. Fritri already go into the internet and go to Google and search directly using search engine. Right. So nowadays, search engine of Google, especially Google, is very powerful. I'll go on where I talk about keyword. I will talk about a bit about using search engine and things like that. Right. And of course, they're sharing content through social media. And normally my friends or my colleagues that read my papers, then they'll tag me on the social media and things like that. That's kind of normal. All right. Can I take maybe 3 minutes at a time? I have a stopwatch here. I really need to time it properly. Can you read? Now we have, like just now, all this, right? All this section is inside the paper. Can you decide, when you decide to read the paper, right? Which one is the thing that you will read first? Can you rank it by yourself? And let's have 3 minutes, very fast. So which is the part you will read first, right? When you get the paper. Afterwards, I have the data that I will show it to you. Data from the editor. That means the journal editors, what they will read first. Some of the outcome will surprise you.
Okay, should we answer your questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I think the first one, we have to say the title is the first one. We have to know about what is the important things we have to know about, what we want to learn and what we want to search. The first time, of course, we have to read the title and then the keywords. The second and the third, of course, we will see the method. I think
sure.
Yes.
Sure. I guess sorry, I think it's Tulus. Tulus share with us, there's no brainer, right? Because we want to go and we want to search something. So when we search something, I type the keywords. When I type the keywords in, then of course, then that means the keywords, I read the keyword first. Even without even reading, I already have keywords. I search keywords and Google and the search results coming out. Then when search result coming out, then I start to click on it. Then when I click on it, normally it's a title that coming out, right? Then I click on the title. So the second thing that I read is the title. So it's already tell I read the keyword first because I'm the one that coming out with keyword for search purposes. Then the second thing is the title. If not, I won't even click into the link, right? I guess this is a logical making sense sequences. But how about when I don't know about you all. I having a habit to read few journals in my research area constantly. Let's say I always read Langmail because I publish a lot in Langmail. I like to go to Langmail. It's one of my key journal in my research area. So I think now it's almost Q3, but I don't care whether it's Q1, Q2, or Q3. I will go to that journal because it's a good journal in my research area. So I constantly read it. So when you have this journal in your mind, right, that means a good journal in your research area. You pull out the journal link, then you just look through. Then of course now you start to ask this question, right? Which is the paper that I'm reading? Of course, it's not keyword and anything like anymore, right? But that your research area, then of course something that have to catch your attention first. It can be still a keyword, right? So it means you won't really look at the paper without too much of relevancy, even though it's in your research area. Right.
Yeah, but I think the title is the more important than the keyword because from the title we will know about what they read, what they write, right? As usually,
I'll give you
from the title we know about the means of.
Sure. Let me give you I think let's look at the results. Then I'll coming back to these questions. There's sometimes people are not reading the title first, there's possibility, In fact, sometimes I'm not looking at the title first, but I'll tell you there's special cases where this not happen. But I'll reserve the answer for Toulouse after we've gone through some of the people. I think a lot of people already post it, but I think most of them agree with Toulouse, right? Like Novi say title come first, then Getrudis say read title first, Ani City also title first, Wanajami also title first, then Leah look at abstract, then Lukman say title first, Eurito titles, then abstract. Then most of the sequence is title abstract, then title keyword abstract. All right, so good. Let's look at some of the result. Some of the things they really surprise you, right? For example, the ACS editor, right? The editor from ACS, right? They look at the abstract first. Then only they quickly scan through the abstract. Then only they go back to look at the title properly. I guess the reason is because they're editor. So whenever the paper assigned to them, they already know this is in their research area. So they didn't really bother to look at the title first. They scan through very quickly abstract and see what is inside the paper first. Then they only go back to the title and see whether the title making sense. Then only they go and look at the conclusion, surprisingly, right? Then only they go and look at the results and things like that. Then there's one professor from Stanford University, Bob Seeger. He read like usual, like what normal people, right? Look at the title first, then he look at who is the author, right? Then only he go and look at the abstract, right? Then the other from Florida International University, well, what she did, she looked at author first. In fact, this is what I'll directly go back to those questions. In fact, sometime, right, I'll look at author first as well. I won't even look at the title because I always search. I'm using the authors. Then I want to keep track on certain people. Let's say, for example, some of my collaborators. I always keep track on their papers and things like that. So normally I'll go and look at my collaborators, especially who is their co-authors. So I know before even I read the titles, I kind of have some idea. Okay, they are working on this area. Let's say they are let's say for example, one of my collaborators, Judy Fraudos from Spain. He's a theoretician, and sometimes he works with experimentalists. Those are the people that I will be generally interested because I'm an experimentalist. He's a theoretician. So especially his work published with experimentalists in my read area, I will look at it first. So that's where I come from authorship. I will look at author first. And in fact, I would say that 99% of the time, people are looking at the title first, but there's sometimes, especially you look at the ACS editor, right? They look at the abstract first. So from this alone, right, it's already give us a very important hint, you know. The hint is this. Let me stop my stopwatch first. The hint is this. If you want to submit to journal in ACS, right, the abstract, you should put in a lot of efforts on your abstracts, right? You should don't take it too lightly, because sometimes I know normally title is the one that write the last, abstract is second last. But this is after a long, tedious writing process, especially for a student, right? That means you write through the papers, maybe like what I told you all, right? One of my paper, right? I've gone through 30 drafts with my advisor. And the worst is I have 2 PhD advisors. So it's like ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding between 3 of us. So when you wrote the piece last, right, it might be after you finalize everything. So you might want to push it out from your hand as soon as ASAP. But from here, you can see the abstract is normally the editor will read the abstract first. So maybe it's worthwhile for you to put in a lot of efforts on the abstracts, right? So that's one of the really important take-home message for these general discussions, right? Of course, then we rank. No surprise, whatever Drew say is 100% correct. You know, number one is always the title. People look at the title first, then people look at the abstract, then people look at authors. Right? Surprisingly, people look at authors. All right. So I would like to bring out this one of the very powerful way to.
May I ask you, JitKang?
Yes, Bruce.
Why the diagram is important? You have to write from the abstract. That's the parts, right? The diagram is the parts. Each person who the right part of the paper. This is important diagram for the paper.
Yes. I think it's very important. Historically, it's also tell us. Later on in the third part, when how to writing a good research paper titles, I'll share with all some of the very important papers in scientific history. Then you can have a look at the title as well. So you could have a feeling about, you know, how important is title. But nowadays, remember now, publication is not only published as simple as that, right? If you talk to the people with a marketing strategy in mind, now it's the marketing war as well. Afterwards, I will share with you all a video by George Whiteside. I guess the marketing war now is this. We are every one of us writing a paper and we publish, and we are fighting attention. We're fighting to get attention from the readers. Like what we established just now. Nowadays, so many papers have been published every single day. What's make other people read your papers, but not my papers or other people's papers? I guess the title need to be self-explanatory enough so people will know exactly this and have to catch their attention. So those are the, if you're talking to marketing strategy, to be honest with you, I'm very bad at it. I'll give you some example. I construct a lousy titles, then I'll share with you all how lousy is my research articles titles and things like that. But I guess the important part is the research articles. Now it's almost like a public, it's a marketing war. So we need to fight for attentions, and titles is definitely very important because like what you say just now is the first thing that people read, yes. Right?
Okay. In other ways, you will say that the diagram is that you must show the diagram on your paper.
Sorry again, Bruce, I can't get it.
Each paper have to diagram.
You mean the graphical abstract, are you?
Yes.
Sure. Yes, definitely the
paper. If the paper doesn't have diagram, or it's just not really good paper.
Okay. I guess nowadays I'm not sure. I never, at least in 2022 now this year, I don't think there's any journal is not asking for graphical abstract. If you come across any journal are not asking for graphical abstract, I think most journal nowadays, especially published by like Elsevier, Wiley, American Chemical Society, Royal Society of Chemistry, those are relevant to us, chemistry related and things like that. I think most are actually having graphical abstracts. So graphical abstract has already been a part and parcel of the whole publication process. That's the reason I'm going into the graphical abstract as well.
Yes. It's easier to us to read from the data, right? From the diagrams, from the graphics.
Sorry, again?
From the graphic, it's easier to us to see the data.
Yes, yes. I think, all right. Graphical abstract is really important because nowadays, I guess the young, especially young generation, I guess it's not only young generation. I think all of us because there's overwhelming amount of information that's available online. So when there's overwhelming amount of information online, people tend to skip a lot of things. This is the superficial generation. I think all of us is a superficial generation. We want to get very quick result and very quick information. So graphical abstracts serve as a first impression because you not even need to read through. You just look at it and get something out. And so graphical abstract can serve as a very important and a powerful way to bring the first impression and the first message across to the audience, right? But I don't deny there's also very old-fashioned people who read the title first. I'm one of them because sometimes I know I just read titles, then only I go and look at the graphic abstract.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tulus. All right. One of the things that I want to share with you all is this. I learned this trick when I was still a student, a PhD student in United States. When I do my first paper, right? I tell you all, let me share with you all some of the mistakes I made during my first paper, writing during my first paper. I do, like usual, I do the experiment first. After I finish all the experiments and then collecting data and things like that, then only I come to writing. When I come to writing, then only I realize I missed something. Because when I write for quite some time, then I say, it would be nice if I have these results. Then what I did is I stopped writing, I go back to the lab and do the experiment to get the result I want in order for me to put inside this paper. You know what is the harm of doing that? The harm is I lost my momentum in writing because writing takes a lot of efforts and momentum, especially for those who are writing, the first day when you sit in front of a computer and start writing, you write 3 sentences. It's so difficult to start, right? But the more you write, the more you start to build the momentum and the better it becomes. So after 2 or 3 days, you start to build momentum, you write very smoothly because you have a lot of ideas come into your mind. Then you stop somewhere because you are missing some information and you need to go back to your lab and do your lab and in order to get the information. That is where I just realized that is not a very powerful way of writing research articles. Then when I searched online, I found him, George Whiteside. I think he's a chemist with the highest H index so far, right, from Harvard Chemistry. He actually write a paper to teach other people how to write a paper. He published a paper to teach people. He's not only famous, he have a lot of very productive PhD students and become professors in top university in the world, like MIT, Cambridge, ETH, Zurich, you name it. All his student is everywhere. And according to Whiteside, right, we shouldn't, just do our lab blindly or just doing it for the sake of learning thing. We should structure our research activities based on the paper we're going to write. For example, Whiteside proposed in your next paper, right? There's one hypothesis. Normally, one paper is come with one hypothesis, and normally not more than 3. The hypothesis that you want to prove. And when you postulate this hypothesis, you have imagined you want to write this hypothesis out in your next paper. What is the first figure? You have to ask yourself, what is the first figure I want to include in my paper, my next paper? If it is about hypothesis, then obviously you need to have a pictorial illustrations to represent your idea. Then follow with your, in your result discussion, your second figure, your third figures, and your fourth figures. Right. And actually, for those who know, especially if you have friends who go to do a postdoc in Whiteside group, then he always asks his postdoc this question: what is your next paper, and what is the main message you want to deliver, and what is the result? Then they very specifically put in figure 1. I want to, of course, they do not have figure yet, so they will ask figure 1. They even come to detail, figure 1A. I want to draw this graph. then the y is what axis, what x-axis, what kind of information I want to put inside and things like that. So Whiteside already, according to Whiteside way, right? He actually already put everything into the structures into a paper form. And one thing, he also planned what kind of transition data. That means the data might be not very important to appear in the main body of the manuscript to go to the supplementary information, right? And let us have a quick look. I'll try to paste this link. I'll play it here as well, but I'll paste this link on the chat so you all could, have a look at it as well. But of course, I'll play it. All right. On the chat, I'll play it here. This is what I said. Is the video have sound? Can you all hear the sound when I play? All right, thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Perhaps the most important part of publishing research, besides actually doing the research, is writing your manuscript. We had the opportunity to sit down with George Whitesides, professor in the Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Harvard University, and author of over 1,100 publications. We spoke with him about his perspective on authoring a scientific article. We found George in his office surrounded by shelves of books and a stack of journals to read. We asked Professor Whitesides what advice he would give to someone beginning the process of authoring an article.
The major issue is to consider that writing is a part of the research process. There's a notion that one does research by carrying out a research project, putting together a pile of data, and then lining it at the end for writing. But for us, writing the paper is an integral part of the research process. So it provides a method of organizing your thinking about what data you need to collect, and putting it in a coherent form. So my advice is start as soon as possible and regard it as part of the research, not a separate activity.
If you start writing the article at the same time you start your research, is there a danger you will bias your results?
What we do is to start with a hypothesis. And science, after all, is entirely about testing hypotheses. What one does is to suggest an idea, do experiments to test the idea, and then you proceed from there. If the experiments disprove the idea, you toss them out and start something else. You can do exactly the same thing in writing. It's just that it's cleaner and more precise because you put it down in words. So I don't think there's any more danger, in fact, probably less danger of biasing the results based on something that's written, that's something that's an idea that's in the back of your head and hidden there.
How do your students handle your approach of writing while you research?
So there's a process in which they object mightily to the constraints of a fairly defined system for writing. But I will say that essentially all of them, after they leave and take on their own research groups, say, we're so happy we learned this because it really is extraordinarily useful.
How many drafts does each paper undergo? Do you have your papers undergo an internal review?
Typically, our papers may go through in the order of 15 drafts before we think they're finished. And since we tend to work on projects in a way that's pretty collaborative, so a number of people will be involved in a project, that means that in principle, let's say 4 people on a paper have read the paper, every word, wall to wall, 15 times and rewritten it. Now, is that internal review? It is internal review in the sense that everyone really works to make sure the assumptions in the paper are correct, that the words in the paper are correct, that we're really saying what we mean to say. Is it internal review in the sense that we write a paper and then we give it to someone else who doesn't know anything about it, a kind of internal referee? The answer is we don't do that. So the internal reviewing is to make sure that the people who are actively working on the project and whose careers are invested in getting it right spend a lot of time going over it and over it and over it. And at the same time, by the way, learning how to write English.
How do new technologies help scientists communicate their work?
One of the things that one of the real revolutions to me in science, in reporting of science, has been YouTube. And I say that because if you think about, go back 20 years, 30 years, the science that you could do was the science you could report. And that meant you had to be able to describe your science in words or in tables or in plots in 2 dimensions on a piece of paper. And if you did other things, you really couldn't do it. You couldn't do that. You couldn't describe other kinds of science. And with videos, you can now describe dynamic phenomena which are simply too complicated, too complex, too unusual, too full of information to do in words and 2-dimensional pictures. So I think that the availability of media which distribute video has opened an enormous range of science for exploration that was just previously closed. But we don't have a very good integration of that kind of information yet with the traditional scientific paper. And that is part of the process that's being worked out now.
Do authors need to be thinking of marketing their articles?
Marketing is a funny word because it has a pejorative connotation. But I think the answer to the question is yes. Think about 2 classes of problems. One is a class of problems in which you are working with a lot of other people in a field to move something forward. I mean, synthetic methods are often in this category. That is, the method exists, but what people do is to improve it. It's kind of synthetic engineering. Particularly if you're a young person, you have to differentiate yourself from others. Differentiating yourself from others in a field in which the ideas already exist is, I want to call it marketing, and is marketing. The other end of things is when you have something which is a new idea. I mean, you've come up with something that really doesn't exist at present. Then the hardest thing that I know to do is to get people to look at a new idea for the very sensible reason that to look at a new idea seriously, they have to consider taking the investment in time, learning, and experience in whatever it is they're doing. Think about abandoning that to go do something new. That's expensive and complicated and really difficult. So you have to convince them that your new idea is worthwhile being considered with that kind of serious intent, otherwise known as marketing. So if you want to call it marketing, or you want to call it persuasion, or you want to call it making a scientific case, it's all in a sense the same thing. You're trying to influence the way people think. And one of the tenets of the group has always been that if the research that we do does not change the way people think, the project is a failure. Because if it's just us talking to us, why would we do that?
How concerned should I be about the title and abstract of my papers?
What journalists, people who write for the newspaper and who do it professionally, say is that when a reader is scanning a newspaper, you've got basically the first 2 sentences to catch their attention. Because they start reading an article, and if something doesn't grab them, the title or the first sentence or 2, they just go to the next paper. There's the same fighting for attention in science. And a nice picture helps because people tend to scan articles based on pictures. An interesting title, something which catches your attention. What does that mean? I mean, that helps. And then the first couple of sentences explaining what the problem is or what the exciting result is or what happened. The barest abstract to catch your attention. If your attention is caught, then you'll explore the paper further. But everything that you read does have that characteristic of there's this mass of stuff. You have to pick out one of the mass and pay attention to it. And what's the basis for picking that one? We need to, all of us, compete on that basis.
All right. I guess one of the really, first of all, I think I'm back. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I guess one of the really important thing, I don't know whether you all miss it or not, is about his talk about YouTube and how to use the YouTube for publication. I'm just wondering, do any of you, when you publish You have a reference in your reference, you can have a link to your YouTube link. There's a video, that means you publish your results, but you posted the whole video, whole set video onto YouTube, right? So if you say, if you have done it before, can you put 1? Yes, I've done it before. I've done it, so I put yes. Do any other people have done to publish? If no, then you put 0. I mean, no, I never use YouTube. I never, publish my results, put my result on YouTube, then cited it as my references or as a supplemental video. I hope everybody is still on the YouTube and is not coming back. All right, I want to bring out this important point. Nowadays, most of the journals allow you to upload your video as well. So you can submit your video as a supplemental link, supplementary information. So please take full advantage of such a platform, because sometimes, right, the video is much easier for you to explain your science and can communicate your science much more effectively rather than through a conventional two-dimensional ways, writing articles and as described in the words, right? So if you have, submit journals and things like that, and you haven't submit any video before, maybe in your next paper, you should consider submit a video to illustrate your ideas and things like that, right? And in fact, sometimes you can actually post it on YouTube, but be very careful, because those, before you submit to your publisher, you shouldn't post it on YouTube and make it as a public domain. You can close to public and just with the link. Only when your paper has published, then only you make the link available to public, right? So be very careful about sequence of doing it. But the thing is, YouTube can be a very powerful way of getting your science communication science effectively. All right. Then, of course, the last point the George Whiteside bring out is actually the discussion between me and Toulouse just now. We are talking about, title, abstract, and graphic abstract is about finding attention, thing like that. All right. So I'm not telling, just now I'm talking about Whiteside way to, to structure papers and things like that. I think all of us should try it. I'm not telling you it's easy. To be honest, in fact, it's very hard, because you have to constantly referring back to structures and restructuring your papers and things like that, and reorient your research direction according to restructuring your papers. It's a very difficult and challenging process. But the more you're doing it, it's getting much better, especially for young students, because then you won't waste too much of your time to, to aligning your papers and the research work. So at the end, almost all my students have gone through this process. They actually find it very effective, especially when it comes to big journal publications. All right, so let's just continue and move on and talk about writing a good research paper title, which is the most important one, since most of people will read the research title first. Of course, the title is an advertisement for your research, like what I say just now. And we should include descriptive words, like what was studied and what was measured and things like that inside the title. And we should consider writing it last, right? After you finish your whole papers, then you only write your title. And try it to be very brief. Do not exceeding the most 20-30 words is almost the max. Do not write a paragraph that become a title. Remember, if we are using title as a way to, getting attention from people, if your title is too long, people will get really tired of reading it. So in fact, it doesn't really play the role of getting attentions, right? And if you really look at it, right, overall, right, there's 3 forms of scientific titles that you can construct it. The first one is the interrogative. That means you posted a question, interrogating, right? So that means you questioning something. You posted the questions. The other one is descriptive. You describe something. And third one is declarative. That means you declare something. Depends on the most important part of your paper. If your paper is about talking a new hypothesis, right? Especially a hypothesis that bring a new thought and actually overturn the old understanding of conventional belief, right? So it is a hypothesis paper. It emphasizes a lot on hypothesis. then you should construct your paper title using, interrogative tone. However, if you are talking about method, and sometimes, you design methods and you want people to teach other these new methods that, especially synthesis method and whatever, then it's mostly descriptive. And of course, if you have a striking new results or very important, like breakthrough results, then it's declarative, right? And I don't normally I would say partner with somebody and sitting near to you, but if you can't partner, let's say now I provide you with one abstract here. Can you design a descriptive or declarative or interrogative titles? That means you describe it as a method, or you want to declare it as a result, or you want to interrogative it as hypothesis based on the abstract given here. Then afterwards, I'll invite you all to share what is your title based on the abstract. All right, so let me time it myself, 5 minutes. This abstract is actually one of the abstract of my papers, and I mix very minor modifications. So in order for it, you can make it a descriptive, declarative, or interrogative. Depends on which one you think is more important. All right, so just in case you all need, I'll go back to this slide a bit. So the integrative normally is a questions, hypothesis. If you think there's questions, then you should maybe construct this in questions form. And the descriptive, is a method. So it's synthesis of iron, blah, blah, blah. Then when it comes to results, so I just report the results. So in nanoscale transfer behavior, blah, blah. All right, if you already have if you have the title, why not you just share it on the chat so I can have a look at it? Not yet. 1 more minute. All right, I guess time's up. May I invite anyone of you want to share it? You could share it by paste one of your title on the chat, or you can also read it out if any of you. Right. Anybody want to volunteer? All right.
Okay,
Yes,
I want to answer your question, but usually in Indonesia, the abstract of the paper will tell us about the method, but I cannot see the method of the abstract of your paper. So I will try to answer. The method is experimental, right?
Yes.
Yes. The result is the force are small, the gradients up to 34 m.
Yes.
The end of the sentence of the abstract is the result, and the hypothesis is how peaks of iron oxide.
Yes.
I think.
Sure. Thank you, Toulouse. Yeah. So from here, right, you could see it. Of course, there's some experimental method like dark field optical microscopy is one of the methods and things like that, right? What say just like I think when Najami said declarative, that means she want to report a result. She say force of nanoparticle is detected using the field gradient. Oh, that's good because it's like try here is the 1.5 femtonewton 10 to the power negative 15 is a very small forces, so it's declarative. That means they will report the results and using the field gradient to detect the forces, right? That's one of them, right? So if we look at it, we can construct a field one. Let's say, for example, we can talk about what nanoparticles, what type of nanoparticles, what to study, the properties of nanoparticles just now, like the forces and things like that, right? So, okay, the hypothesis Eurito. The importance of individual driving force in Brownian and viscous drag forces of iron oxide nanoparticles. Yeah, good. Because Brownian, like just now in the abstract say Brownian and viscous drag, right, is imposed on nanoparticles that prevent it for magnetically manipulation, right? So the hypothesis is we want to check how important is the Brownian motion and the viscous drag, right? So here is some of the thing that I showed, some of the titles that are constructed based on the abstract given just now. Let's say like descriptive single particle motion tracking by dark field microscopy, right? So magnetophoresis iron oxide gold co-shell nanoparticles, because that's specifically what kind of particles is iron oxide gold co-shell nanoparticles, right? And the descriptive term because it's method, right? So we're talking about dark field microscopy, so it's one of the experimental methods. Then declarative, like just now I've been saying, force-driven nanoscale transport behavior. There's the forces involved. Like I believe just now, the declarative, like what is exactly like this, which is reported by Wanajami. And of course, the interrogative, that means hypothesis. Does tracking the nanoscale transport behavior of nanoparticles under magnetophoresis reveal underlying forces involved for its motion? is exactly like the Eurito was just saying, right? So, driving forces, what kind of driving force and things like that. All right. So you all want to guess. Actually, that's this paper. I published this paper, but before I do not understand all this in descriptive, interrogative when I was a student. So the title of my paper is Magnetophoresis of Nanoparticles. You see, this is how I publish. That's the magnetophoresis of nanoparticles. If I can reverse, I can go back to time, right? Then I tell myself, you're an idiot. The name is not very descriptive, right? So if I have the chances to fix this, I definitely will fix the title, because I think magnetophoresis of nanoparticles, of course, it's too plain. It doesn't tell anything. It's not descriptive enough, right? So there's now I think all of us have learned. So it's have to be descriptive. It can be declarative or interrogative, and we need to do one, right? And one important thing is this. Now we know title is important, right? Can you all read through this title? Will you read this paper by just seeing the title? Now I give you 3 papers, the title of these 3 papers. On the electrodynamic of moving bodies, on a heuristic viewpoint concerning the production and transformation of light, and on the motion of small particles suspended in a stationary liquid as required by molecular kinetic theory of heat. All right, can you now put in the chat, if after reading this title, right, you have interest, you attract you and you have interest, you want to read more, then you put 1. And if not, you just put 0. You think, this title is boring, then you put 0. How many of you will read these papers after reading the titles? There's no right and wrong answer, If you look at this title, do you think do you think it's going to be attractive enough for you to reading it? Okay. Zushin say no, most probably no. Especially, what is heuristic viewpoint? I not even understand what is heuristic. Right, no. How about you, Toulouse? Will you read it?
Yes.
You'll read it, is it? You think it's interesting? Okay. And a lot of you
yeah, of course.
Yes.
From the title, we can read about the main of the experiments of the paper,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
From the title, we can see what they learned, what they search from the title.
Yes.
Tell us about it. Say.
Yes. Of course, from the title, you kind of know, like at least the third title, on the motion of small particles suspended in a stationary liquid as required by molecular kinetic theory of heat and things like that. You kind of know it's actually about the Brownian motion and things like that, right? So, but like especially, I don't know why this author like to use the word on something, on the electrodynamic of moving bodies, on heuristic viewpoint. It is really old-fashioned, and I think it's not very attractive, right? I guess, and most of you not even want to read this paper because what I can see is all 0, 0, 0, 0. But how about this? Let me tell you all this, right? All these 3 papers is published by Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
And these are 3 most important papers published by him.
I think some people doesn't care about the parties of the paper, right? They only read from the title and the results. So
sure.
We don't read all the paper. They only read the most important.
Yes, of course. I guess one thing is we are not even in this research area. Let's say electrodynamics is a very difficult subject. So most probably people won't even look at it, right? Or the photoelectric is a difficult subject, especially in physics. Then most probably didn't read it. I will say that the third one, I will most probably, if I read through this without knowing Albert Einstein is the author, most probably I only read the third papers because the third papers is really related to my research area, but not the first and second one. But what I'm trying to bring out here, the message is, even Albert Einstein papers, you need a good title in order for attract people to read it. right? Just now our response already say that the title is not very attractive and people, sometimes it's just too dry and it's not descriptive enough, right? But the thing is that it's important for us to construct a title. I think that's important take home message. All right, let's just continue and talking about after the title. Let's talk about and what is abstract. I think the main important thing about the abstract is after, let's say we are so successful and create a very nice titles and people got attracted. So if they read the title, oh, that's interesting, it's something that I really want to know more and it's relevant, I want to read further. They will go and look at your abstract, most probably. And your abstract, right, is served as one small paragraph of summary that actually justify or tell the readers whether they will continue reading it or not, right? It's normally a very small paragraph. In fact, some of the journal like ACS Nano, they have a strict words limitation. Sometimes it's just 150 words, sometimes it's 300 words, but normally they have a word limitations. And it's a summary of the mini paper. It's not the place to add new informations, and it's allowed the readers to file through search, and it's considered to writing last or next last. So after you finish writing everything, then only you go back to write abstract, then only you write your title. And normally abstract, right, even though there's no any strict format, but if you read most of the good abstract written by the top scientists, they always follow certain rule. The first 1 or 2 sentences is introduce what is the purpose of research in your abstract. The first 1 or 2 sentences, then is briefly follow with what kind of methods you have been using to achieve your goal, and follow with some few sentences about result and discussions, and you try to include your important data and things like that, and afterwards the conclusion, right? Just 1 paragraph and what you can learn out from it, right? So there's other abstract tips. Your abstract should be written in past tense. So don't use I will be discussed, will be determined. It's all past tense because it's already what you're reporting, you summarize what you have done. As abstract should be the self-contained. Don't make the reader to search the paper to understand it, especially if you want to use like certain kind of short form, right? Let's say magnetic nanoparticles, MNP. You need to provide full form magnetic nanoparticles bracket MNP in abstract. No abbreviations, references, images. I'll bring out this no references in your abstract with 1 rule of exception. If you want to publish 1 hypothesis, right, that actually proving something, the conventional belief is wrong, so you can put in references in your abstract. That means you cite one of the key paper, key finding, and say we want to provide the different viewpoint in this paper, because this paper is a well-recognized paper. Everybody know this paper and everybody read this paper, and you want to bring another point of view. Then it's possible you can put in your references, but 99.999% of time, do not put any references in your abstract, and use a very clear results, and use the number if you have them. Especially like just now, like 1.5 femtonewton. Especially if you have a breakthrough, right? Then if you could describe the breakthrough in terms of number, then maybe you should do it, right? And do not exaggerate is important. Please don't try. This is one of the most important, one of the landmark or one of the key breakthrough, whatever. Do not exaggerate is important. How important is your work? You should leave it to the reader to decide, not advertising it, not declaring it in your paper. Right, so please do not exaggerate the importance of the papers especially in abstract, and use quantitative way but not qualitative way. If you say something about you report the results and it is faster, like say the motion of the particles is 3 times faster, you should report what is the velocities, then only 3 times faster. Do not use just faster, larger, more effective, more durable. Don't try to use the qualitative languages, you try to use quantitative way. That means, especially for scientific, now I'm talking specifically about scientific research, scientific publication. It might be different from the arts and things like that, all right? But for quantitative purposes, you need to report with numbers, especially for engineering and science publication. So I download this paper from Journal of American Chemical Societies. The authors, the corresponding author is Jambu Samojai from Berkeley. He's a very famous scientist in reaction kinetics, right? So if we got through, his papers, and you can see, right, the first sentence is, infrared visible sound frequency generation, vibration spectroscopy. So from this first sentence, right, you already know he using this new technique in order to investigate surface structures of lysozyme, phenogenes, and also bovine serum albumin absorbed onto the hydrophilic surface and hydrophobic portion as a function of protein characterized concentration. Then he explained what he have gone through and things like that, and what is controversy. However, material group in PSA have become less tilted with respect to surface normal with increasing protein concentration at surfaces. Then at the last part, he concluding by saying FG data show the orientation ordering of phenyl ring in the polystyrene surface and blah blah. So he have always first talking about sentence, introduction, what's happening, what kind of thing he's working at. Then he mentioned about fluorescence microscopy, experimental method he used to achieve that. Then follow with the key results he obtained. Then with the last one, conclusion and what he have learned out from holding. Right. So I guess this is structures of a very good abstract. Then he have all the structures, and he do it step by step to explain what kind of information he's going to present in these papers, right? Then I also come across with like some abstract which is not written in a very good way. For example, the objective of this study is analyze and compare techniques of three common blah blah important in lead industry and things like that, right? Do not be too descriptive. Why this is important. Then sample were collected from blah blah, were collected from blah blah, and I'm not sure why he mentioned about where he collected these samples. Is it really important? And bulk sample from bulk collection, trees were extracted with boiled DI water. He tried to explain the method here, but the boiling DI water and things like it's not a very dedicated, specialized experimental technique. Is it really necessary for such a common thing to be included in abstract? Then now he done his method. Okay, this is good because he put the methods, different amount of present before and after blah blah of tennis present, different amount, but he should directly mention about how much is difference and things like that rather than qualitative language, right? Then he have some report of this, like RESP blah blah respectively. He should write it in the full form and contain tennis, the blah blah, and contain this thing, but without telling us what can be learned out from it. The conclusion is still missing, right? So there's few mistakes here and things like that, right? But let's look at one examples together. Like I have highlighted some of this. Like let's look at one example together. This actually I borrow it from what my friend Steve Mayer from ACS. This is he rewrite this. There's a lot of mistake in this abstract. Let us do it together. Okay. Do you all want to read it first, then write down the mistake, or you want us to go through it together? If you want to do it first, then only we go through it together. You want to do it first, you put 1. I want to do it first in the chat. Or you want us to go through together. If you want us to go through together, then say 0. Let's do it together. All right, so let's do it together. All right, okay, if that's the case, let us do it together, right? Let's see. Oh, all right. Everybody want to do it together. All right, let's do it together, right? Why not you read through first round, then we go and do it together. I just use, instead of 5 minutes, just 1 minute. You read through it first and see whether you can detect any mistake. Then eventually we'll read through it again together. This study will determine if an anionic amphiphilic dendrimer is effective or ineffective against cell. Dendrimer have previously shown antibacterial properties. By Hong 2004, we tested the molecule shown in the figure against different cells and measured the outcomes. To perform this test, cells were exposed to different concentrations of compound. Next, a metabolism dye was added to the cell at a concentration of 2 × 10⁻⁴ and allowed to develop for 2 hours to measure the EC50. Finally, the colors were observed on the spectrophotometer with a reading at 419 nanometer. As will be described, it was found that if a large concentration of compound was used, then the human cell were more viable than the bacterial cell. Control tests show other compounds had less of an effect. Without a doubt, dendrimer will work perfectly as an antibiotic, right? So even without me telling you all, you all know it's full of mistakes, right? So I guess the first one is it shouldn't be future tense, right? It should be past tense. It will determine, because remember, abstract summarize what you have done. So it's already been done, right? So grammatically, there's grammatical error, right? The quantitatively, effective, ineffective, large, that's qualitative term. It should be more quantitative. If it is effective, how effective it is. If it is large, how large it is. You should put a value with it. Different concentration. You should directly report what is the concentration differences rather than using this a very vague word or less of effect, whatever. Lack of information, right? Against different cells. What kind of cells is not reported here? Other compound, what kind of compound is not being reported here as well? Like what mentioned just now, you shouldn't have references or abbreviation like EC50. What is EC50? Excuse me, it's not there. Right? Next, a metabolism dye was added, blah, blah, blah. The funny thing is about this is, do not try to copy and paste, even though we mentioned just now, right? We should have explained, or we should at least tell the readers, what kind of methods have been used, have been employed in this study, but do not copy and paste entire paragraph or entire sentences from your experimental section and go into your abstract, right? Shouldn't do it. And it's missing, the unit is missing, like without a doubt would work incredibly well. So it's a perspective, right? We shouldn't include our own perspective. It should be absolute term. And there's no clear summary, not certain what was done or what was the result, right? I guess the most common mistake here is, especially in abstract, is the last sentence, right? It's always you should provide of course, abstract is already a summary, but you should provide a summary of summary, what have been done, right? So to conclude your abstract, right? What have been done and what have been achieved, right? So for these cases, of course, obviously the last sentence is not about concluding what has been done, right? So those are few mistakes that can be found in this abstract. And again, thanks to Steve Meyer from ACS Publishing to providing me with such good examples. All right. After abstract, normally there's another thing, it's called graphical abstracts. And graphical abstract is actually a single concise pictorial and visual summary of the main finding. And it can be the concluding figure from articles or figure that's specifically designed for purpose, right? Well, the first message I will give it, do not recycle any single figure that you have. Let's say in the papers, you already have figure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Do not just recycle one figure and make it your graphical abstract. In fact, nowadays, right, if the reviewer was asked specifically to comment on the graphical abstract, there will one question to ask the reviewer: do the authors recycle his figures, any of his paper figures, as a graphical abstract? If the reviewer say yes, right, most probably your paper will be rejected by the editor, right? So please do not recycle any of your figure to become your graphical abstract. All right. And there's some point to ponder here. If a target journal requires you to submit a graphic abstract along with your manuscript, here are some tips to help you design one. The first one is to think about what your paper is describing. If your paper is describing a mechanism, so the graphical abstract should be a mechanism related. If it's theory, then theory related structures. Then if it's a structures, then you should have the TM images cause and effect. What kind of visual would best showcasing this concept is the most important question to answer. For example, if it is a mechanism, right? So it show like a mechanism, a pictorial representation of the drawing of the mechanisms. And what is the essential element in your study? Think about the keywords, right? So, you know, if it is a methods, right? Some of the keywords should be put inside the graphical abstract. Then even sometimes we can put in step 1, step 2, step 3, and things like that. And for example, if you know you want to talking about activating complex with linking, cross-linking, and non-cross-linking, and having a comparison between these, I really like this kind of graphical abstract because one thing, comparing to just now I showed the whole background is white. I think we all should use a white background rather than a color tone and things like that. And a more important thing is very clean and tidy and bring out the message almost immediately, right? And for example, I believe this graphical abstract is nice as well because it's partitions, is you the color partitioning this into 2 different colors and tell the differences. But for example, like this graphical abstract, I don't like it. The reason I don't like it is because the color tone serves no purposes, any scientific purposes. It's just there for aesthetic purposes. So if you just include something in your graphic abstract for aesthetic design purposes, maybe you shouldn't include it. And other than that, it also have too much wording. In fact, here is also the same. You have too much wording. We have to keep the words simple. Remember, we already have an abstract written in the words. So the graphical abstract is to bring out the graphical representation, graphical illustrations of your ideas. So you not really need to include too much wording. Avoid to be too verbose in your graphical abstract design. Right? Single image or split panels, and do not just use one figure from manuscript, for example, like this. You know, your graphic abstract is one of, I noticed there's quite, especially recently in some journals, they allow this researcher to, to use one graph like this, which is bad. If you want, I'm not saying you shouldn't include a graph in your graphic abstract. You could, but in addition to this graph, you should have something up, draw something to illustrate what this line means, and having a word somewhere to label what this line means, so people can have an idea about what's learning out from this, rather than just throw a graph like this without any explanation. Avoid including too many details or distracting elements, like just now, like for example, like this. You see, they have a whole sentence of it, then eventually putting all wording, blah, blah, too much distractions, and the label is not clear. We barely could see what was that, right? So we have to label clearly. And the last one is use only detail from own finding and not any reference literatures unless absolutely necessary. I will say it. Graphical abstract is used to advertise your work, to bring attention to your words. So it's much more appropriate to use your own results. It is very, very rare cases you will need to use other people's figures or other people's results in the graphic abstract, right? Even for the case, remember just now, there's exception for references in the abstract, right? The references in abstract, unless you want to cite a reference, unless the paper is like the landmark papers in your research area, and now you want to bring a completely opposite view or new insight into this conventional belief, then you cite the reference in the abstract. But even that, in your graphical abstract, I strongly against the idea you include some of the key results from that particular papers as your graphical abstract. Because remember, you are about to bring a new insight. So the graphical abstract is supposed to be your results rather than other people's results. All right. I guess it is, a very effective way for science communication, like what I discussed with Toulouse just now and things like that. Nowadays people try to scan through things very fast, so the graphic abstract bring out the first impressions about your work. So you should use graphic abstract very effectively. All right, I have another 30 minutes. I will go through keyword very fast. All right, so remember just now when we talk about keywords and things like that, keywords actually when if being given a choice, nowadays, all the journal publications, normally they're given a choice of having keywords, right? So keywords is actually been used for searching mechanism, especially if you use a search engines like Google and things like that. And when you key in something, normally what's the paper coming out? Those paper coming out is the one that having a keyword, direct keywords of it. So do not take your keywords too lightly, right? Because eventually the keywords allow other people to find you on the search engine or Google or whatever it is. So you should spend some time to think about what is the keywords that you should use, right? I guess the most important thing you should, even though you are the one that write your papers, but when it comes to deciding the keywords, you should read through the paper again and list out the terms and phrases that are used repetitively, right? And ensure this keyword actually having the key terms and additional key terms in your papers, and include the variant of the term or phrases. Do not just all use, magnetic nanoparticles, magnetic, even though it's 3 keywords, eventually it's one, right? It's magnetic nanoparticles, right? So you should diversify your keywords, right? So people can get it to you. Do not include a common abbreviation of term, right? Let's say, for example, carbon nanotube CNT. It could be a very effective way, right? And finally, before you submit articles, type your keyword in the search engine and check if the results that show up match the subject of the paper, right? I always do this the last step. When I want to propose a keyword, right? Let's say I want to propose one keyword. I'll always use a keyword and use a Google and I type it on Google and search whether the result coming out, right, is the result that I expected. Let's say, for example, I know there's certain people in my research area who are, working on magnetophoresis, Maciej Dubowski, Viking Kovin, Judy Farado, those are the people that working on this. So if I key in my keywords into Google, if those people work is not coming out, then I know maybe something's wrong, right? So I will try to adjust the strategy to include my keywords. So always try to use, the search function of especially Google common search function and Google Scholar specifically to try to key in your keywords, all right? So this is all I want to say about keywords, because I want to go back. Remember, one to highlight, one of the important things I want to talk about paper submission process and also cover letter. And this is what I'm going to do it now. All right. So for most of the cases, now whatever I'm talking now is mainly for the journal by American Chemical Society. All right. But the process is almost similar. When you first submit the papers to your publisher, right, you submit to the main journal office. And of course, the journal office directly is going to the editor-in-chief, right? In fact, when the editor-in-chief, right, when he receives the paper, he'll examine it. Then he will be the first layer of screening, because he will be the one that chooses who is the associate editors or editor that who is going to handle your manuscript, right? So if the title is not appropriate, your cover letter is not convincing, most probably you're not even reaching the subject area. The editor-in-chief, they look at the title, why the title is so funny, it's not even matched whatever he's trying to say. It's already been rejected. Remember, associate editor or handling editor will be the expert in your research area. Chief editor maybe or maybe not, but your paper can be rejected, even reaching in the hand of the expert in your area. You can do the most breakthrough research that will impress people in your own research area, but the chances to get into the associate editor or handling editors, you have gone through editorship. So just now, when we talk about just now, right, the editors will look at the abstract first, then check your title. So your abstract and the title have to be matching each other. So if there's a huge mismatch between your abstract and your title, then it's almost a case of that, right? Then most probably the editorship will just reject it. So be very careful about that. That's the first take-home message. Your abstract and your title needs to be matching each other and well aligned with each other, right? Then finally, it go to the associate editors, and associate editor will really read through your paper more carefully. He will read through the results and discussion and everything. Then he will decide who are the ones that he will invited for a review, right? Of course, in your submission process, you will propose somebody. I'm going to go through it. But here, normally, out of your proposed reviewer, right, he'll pick the most one person only. right? And I want to I want to talk about that later on, but here I want to make myself very clear. Do not propose your friend with the expertise which is completely out of the picture. Again, do not propose your friend with the expertise which is completely out from the scope of your work. It gives a really wrong impressions about you yourself, right? That means you are not confident. You only want your friends to review your articles only, right? Is give a remember when the associate editor or handling editor assign reviewer. In fact, the journal database, right? They only have a lot of people in the database, so the editor can just choose who you want to send. Most probably, most of your friend is already in the database, and you know what? Let's say I propose my friend. He's not. He know my name and he will pass me. So that's the reason I propose it. Then in my research area, I'm talking about magnetic nanoparticle, blah blah. Then I write in my cover letter, right? I want to propose him as my friend, as my reviewer because he's in this area. However, when the associate editor, he want to send out the invitation to him, right? He will click his name. Once he click his name, the expertise coming out, That means, remember when we register, remember when we want to submit to ACS and ThinkJet Publisher, we register ourselves. So we'll put our research area as well to register as a part of registration. The research area your friend register might not the same as what you claim. And that is where the problem comes from. Then most probably the editor won't send your paper to this reviewer, right? And the editor will start to be suspicious. Then if he'll try to choose another name, then the another name that will propose, you think is this, and the research area again is not matching. Then there will be some serious question coming up, right? So please do not propose your friend only. You really need to make sure the reviewer that you propose fit the scope of your work, right? And the few things, I think one of the really important things that I will bring up, the reviewer normally they do it for free. The reviewer never get a single cent of reviewing our papers. I think most of you all already know it because you all have to review papers and things like that, right? So it's a free services. So the selected expert by the editors. And so some of the sample questions they will be asking is, I will have a more directly from the reviewer, the platform later on. But this is the first one they'll ask, is the scope of the work appropriate for the journal? Sometimes I ask it. In fact, right, nowadays, the reviewer are not expect to answer this question anymore because the editor or the associate editor, they already reject the papers if it's not in the scope. And are the methodology and data valid? And that's the most questions the reviewer have answers. The reference is complete. The work representative enough. The manuscript original. That's the most important, is the novelty. In most cases, the reviewer will reject the paper because there's lack of novelty. That means it's not something new. People already talk it. There's 1,000 papers out there talking about the same thing. Then you publish the same thing, right? That is the easiest way to reject a paper, right? So for at least for ACS, normally they will have 3 reviewer and more. If all 3 is negative, 3 negative, you got rejected no matter how. If 2 negative and 1 positive, most probably you'll get rejected. It's when come to 2 positive and 1 negative, then maybe you'll get a division and comments and ask for divisions. And very rare cases, you'll get 3 positive and accept without revision. I don't know how about Dr. Fitri or Toulouse or whatever. I never ever in my life I got accepted without any revision. It never happened to me. How about you all? Do any of you actually got accepted without revision at all?
I've been once in Journal Physical Chemistry, ACS.
Oh, Journal Physical Chemistry. Congratulations, it's a good journal. And
but previously, I submitted the draft to JAX.
Okay.
Yeah, the reviewer comment were very positive at the time, but the problem is the editor not sure if my article can attract broader reader.
Yeah.
Since JAX very high impact journal, and then the editor suggested me to submit to other journal. Then I try to send back the draft, how to say, together with the reviewer comment.
Yeah.
Then yeah, the editor just only 3 days, if I'm not mistaken, very quick, and it just got accepted.
That means the paper is really well written and it's very new, thing like that, right? Yeah, because normally it's very rare for cases, positive, right? So if you look at it, there's from a publishing research consortium in 2008, right? It's only about 8% of the paper is accept no revision is needed. Most of the accept one is with revision, 41%. There's about 8% reject with no review, and another 13 because out of scope, and another 13% is reject no review, low quality. So this add up to about 21%. I believe in some of the ACS journal, this percentage can go up to 30 or even 40%. Also, it's very high. And of course, there's about rejection after review is 30%. Some of the journal, the exception, of course, it depends, right? Like just now, Dr. Chris the checks, right? The rejection rate can be 90-something%, 90% I believe. It's like super high, or 80% or whatever. So it's really high percentage has been rejected, right? So that's very common. So for the young student, it's very common to get rejected. I have one very famous professor. He's Lee White. He's a mathematician working in the chemical engineering, and he's write a very difficult mathematics papers and things like that. And he's well regarded, well respected in our research area. And there's one time his paper was rejected because the paper is too difficult to read. The reviewer do not understand the paper, and it got rejected because the reviewer think it's too difficult. Nobody can understand this maths. Why you even publish? The maths is so difficult. So even a reputable, very famous professors from top university, the paper can be rejected with very funny reason. So do not get too demotivated if your paper are being rejected, because rejection is almost now a part of our career. If you can't handle rejection, please do not become a lecturer, because the rejection comes every single day. All right. So the thing is, do not get demotivated if your first paper was rejected. I know sometimes a student will be very upset because we take months of efforts, years of efforts to not only do the science but writing, but rejection is inevitable. That means you can't avoid it. It's always come as a part of the career. All right. Let me talk about the cover letters and the response to review. Right. So like what we just talked just now, right? You submission to main journals and you go to the editor-in-chief, right? The first thing is you need to make sure your manuscript is follow the journal guideline and describe the most important aspect and implication of your words, include element of novelty, highlight how your manuscript fit within the scope of the journal, and address the solution to editor by name. I have a sample. Look at this Joshua Frankenstein's on the Natures. I obviously can't speak for editors at other journal, but I always read the cover letter. It's often the first thing editor reads, right? Don't miss out a chance to make a good impression. In fact, right, a lot of editor-in-chief, right? Normally they'll decide whether they want to send out to let the handling editors handle your manuscript after they read through a cover letter. Sometimes they not even read your abstract. The cover letter maybe is the most important piece of the document to convince the editor and also the associate editor to send your journal out for review. Right. So this is the cover letter. Normally it's a cover letter I prepare. I send it to Journal of Physical Chemistry, like what Dr. Frisch said just now. The important part of cover letter, you always please make sure you have your cover letter, the letterhead of your institution, because it's an official document. Make sure you have a letterhead and address the editor-in-chief by his full name. Do not just dear professor. You need to have his full name and things like that, and put in some efforts. You know who is this editor-in-chief? Go and get his full address. I always do this part. I always will go and check where he's the chair professors in Northwestern University, and even his address and things like that. I always do it. You need to make sure you not only give a full solution, but also his full affiliation. That means you really put in efforts to know him. Then of course the title, then I address him. So that letterhead, contact info, address your editor. The first part is The first part is explain why this paper is suitable for journal publication for particular journal. Remember, all the journal, they have a journal scope listed on their website. You really need to go and look at the journal scope, then ask yourself which journal scope, because some of the journal scope have 8 or 9 journal scope. They have different aspect, very subfield of this journal. You really need to explain to your editor why, in which subfield your paper is fit into. For example, in the first paragraph, I say, on behalf of my co-authors, I'm submitting this for consideration publication or this. We believe our finding will appeal to the leadership of this journal for those who have special interest on transport behavior of magnetic nanoparticles. Because one part of the journal physical chemistry C is transport behavior. So I purposely mentioned transport behavior. You really, really, really need to put it at the first paragraph to justify which scope your paper is fit into. Because the most common, just now you look at it, the statistic, right? The most common and easy way for the editor to reject a paper is your paper do not align with the journal scope. So you want to make sure, you want to tell them why you think your paper is aligned with journal scope. Right? That's a very important thing. Explicitly you're going to mention. Right? Then the second paragraph is to introduce what you have done and to justify its novelty. Right? And normally I will always say this, to best of our knowledge, this is the first demonstration of, I have two. One is the competitive effect between colloidal stability and magnetophorosis, and the second one is since the colloidal stable gold nanorods that exhibit both magnetic and plasmonic behavior in biological media. You see, it's very specific, it's not the synthesis of this, but it's synthesis of colloidally stable gold coated iron oxide nanorod that exhibit both magnetic and plasmonic behavior in biological media. I have always been very, very specific and say this is the first time, to best our knowledge, this is the first time they do it in a very specific way. Right? And I also will emphasize, I also give a explanation to editor. This study is important as provide valuable information concerning genetic or metamorphosis. A process is widely been practiced in biomedical engineering, but it's not well understood. So I will try to justify, why the novelty of my work. So first paragraph, I justify how the work aligns with the journal scope. The second paragraph, I justify the novelty of it. And normally, remember, novelty is another reason why the editor will reject a paper without sending out for review. Especially if your work is very common, you should be very specific and mention what is the specific contributions of your work to your community, right? Then the third paragraph is to include the standard text to fulfill the general guideline. For example, ACS, they always want you, to confirm, we confirm this manuscript has not been published elsewhere and it's not under consideration by other journals. Then all authors have approved the manuscript and agree with submission to Journal of Physical Chemistry C. This is requested by the journal. The journal requests you to declare you didn't submit it, you haven't published the results, you haven't submitted it elsewhere, and all the co-authors agree to give you a green light for you to submit to this journal. So the third paragraph, you really need to put in all the journal requirements. Right? If you didn't have all these things, you give the impression you didn't read the journal guideline, because the journal guideline already explicitly requests you to put it in your cover letter, but you didn't put it. Right? And normally I'll declare again, I'm corresponding authors and give a contact detail, everything. Then even though in the platform, right, remember like ACS Paragon or Elsevier, you could directly key in who is the recommended reviewer you can suggest 6 reviewers. But I always include this list again in my cover letter because I do not want the editor to spend his time to go and search for it. I not only include people, I also include why I think they should. Right? So for example, Rose Alma, she's synthesis of gold-coded magnetic nanoparticles. She worked on this. Rich Davis, colloidal stability. Judy refers on this. I always specifically mention, I propose. Not only I give them their contact detail, and also I suggest why I think they should be my reviewer. Right? So out of to be honest with you, when you submit this paper, 1, 2, 3, I kind of know Rich Davis and Cindy Davis. Like Ben Yellen, I met him before, but he's not really my friend. Jeff is not really my friend, but I kind of met him before and things like that. Oh, so but they are all working exactly in my research area, and exactly is what they're doing is all this related to. So this is where I propose them. And inclusion of an email address is a must. Right. Of course, nowadays in the journal, the submission platform, you could actually select who you want. But I still insist to put in this in the cover letter. So when the editor they read through it, remember this. Let's say if the editor is really a subject area, you really know your work really well and really in this area of work. By looking at this reviewer, they know you're very confident because those people are the key player in the research area. So in other words, I'm trying to use this reference list to actually impress them, to give the level of my confidence. I'm very confident, so that's the reason I propose all these people as key player in my research area. And if I can put in somebody from MIT, some people from Berkeley. If you are not confident, you won't be able to propose those big professors to be your reviewer because most probably they will reject you. So this is I include reference, like the referee recommendation in my cover letter in order to impress the editor as well. So you can do it such a way, right? And also remember to include your signatures, right? So please, check to make sure the editor contact details sometimes is on the journal. If it's not on the journal, please go ahead and just Google search it, right? How about if we have 7 core editors? Some journal they do not have one single chief editor, but they have several core like editors and things like that. When come to this part, right, then you have no choice. You can't address dear Prof. Alan, Maureen, Samantha. You can't everybody, right? So you can just put in dear editors, right? So I have gone through all these things in detail because later on I'll give these slides to Dr. Fritri just in case you all forget about what's been written, things like that. I remind you all about it again. And the third paragraph confirmation, and the third paragraph is the most important one. It stated how it had been submitted through what ACS Paragon, whatever website. Confirm all your co-authors agree with submission to this journal and confirm it has not been published elsewhere. So normally the third paragraph you really need to put it in. Okay, so here is the one of the reviewing process of this one is the ACS, and this specifically is from JACS, General American Chemical Society. The first question they ask is this paper in the top 20% of manuscript in the field. They ask the reviewer to answer these questions, right? And of course, I think for Dr. Fritri case it is appealing to a broad audience because they say, for example, General American Chemical Society is a big journal for chemistry. Whole is considered best journal in chemistry, so it's a broad audience. So if your title is only can appreciate for small percentage of people from inorganic chemistry or very small subset of inorganic chemistry, then it will be very difficult, even though you have a very good science and things like that, right? So those are the questions that the reviewer need to answer, right? Then one thing, provide significant insight or development of important application, works original and significance, and things like that. Those are the questions that the reviewer normally they are expecting to answer. And sometimes the overview they will also ask, like for example, right, the reviewer, the material sciences, overall quality. They ask about overall quality, the quantity, quality. Sometimes it's very vague, and you need to create marks, but nowadays I think most of the journals are more focused on the novelty. That means normally the reviewer that you'll explain again, I accept this or I reject because the novelty, what it is, and things like that. Like relevant material science, appropriate referencing, overall manuscript rating, and things like that. The most common mistakes they didn't understand. Now let's talk about, or I have another 2 minutes. I just want to talk about 2 minutes about respond to reviewer. Remember, reviewer is doing a voluntary work. Non-paid is free. They do free services. And do not try to get too emotional when you respond to a reviewer comment. And do not especially avoid to be unprofessional. Reviewer A is idiot. How could he say something about my work? Do not try to be too emotional. Avoid all these rude words and things like that. Please read through the comment carefully, every single one of them. I know that some students, they're over smart, over intelligent, too smart. Some of the really important, some of very difficult answer questions, right? They just omit it. They answer easy to answer questions and submit as a revision, respond to review. People are, especially editor, right? They will look at it whether you answer every single one of the questions. If you, specifically or I don't know whether consciously or unconsciously exclude certain remark from the reviewer, right? People will using magnified glass and scrutinize you, right? So you need to make sure it's complete revision. Do not skip any questions, especially difficult questions. You just omit it and you thought it's perfectly fine. Nobody will detect it. Everybody will detect it. All right, please don't do it. And of course, don't be emotional. All right. Reviewers are trying to help. I know sometimes the reviewer, there's one time I got the reviewer comment. The reviewer comment have 3 pages. So 3 pages, 20 something comments. Then my response to reviewer, 40 something pages. The response alone is thicker than the whole manuscript, but that's normal. So you just have to do it. Carefully the review comment, reply ensuring and things like that. I just want to give you some tips, right? So again, now for the response to reviewer, I address the handling editors. Remember just now at the chief editors, I addressed the chief editors. But afterwards, I know who is my handling editors because handling editors are the one that communicate the reviewer response back to us. So I will address the handling editors. Like just now, it's still general physics, chemistry, same papers. But now Maria Santo, she's the one that handle maybe. So I addressed it to her. Then the general information and kind action, things like that. So normally you thanks the reviewer in your first, right? Thanks the reviewer and editors because they are doing a free job. So please, at least we have appreciate other people have done something free for us, right? So your analysis, blah blah blah. Your analysis of data, use the custom polynomial fitting and blah blah and things like that. I just want to go quickly. Do not. You can agree or you can disagree with the reviewer comment. That's perfectly fine. Right. Especially if you disagree, you really need to bring out the reason why you disagree. Normally, when I disagree with a reviewer, I will explain carefully why I disagree. Normally, we kindly thanks the reviewer, just invite comment. I will definitely cite some work we have been published to prove to the reviewer some other people have other thought than him or her in this perspective. For example, this guy and things like that. And I also will include extra explanation. Sometimes the disagreement comes because it's not because you don't agree, but she don't understand. The reviewer don't understand the work. So it's better for you to elaborate, rediscuss. All right. So that is very important. And when it comes to agreement, you don't say, yes, I agree, we change this. You say, yes, we agree. Why we agree? Then we have an action taken. So we have removed this out from the discussion or whatever, right? One thing is, especially Asian country, our culture is we try to avoid confrontation. So we normally will keep agreeing. But I'll say in a scientific discussion, it's perfectly fine if you disagree. But if you disagree, make sure you justify your disagreement. All right. I do not have time for these activities. I'll directly go to, one thing. Sometimes we can be very professional, but the reviewer can be very nasty. And sometimes it's even personal attack, right? To be honest with you, I like this kind of reviewer. Do you know why I like this kind of reviewer? Especially they are very unprofessional, using vulgar words, very emotional, and nasty comment. Because I won't die by the bullet. I will normally write a very professional request to the editor and ask him to exclude this reviewer tree out. To be honest with you, if the editor don't do it, especially they say they use vulgar word, use a nasty word, right, and personal attack. If you write, the editor know it, I will write in the journal platform, the journal have their own Facebook, Twitter, and things like that. Then the editor will be serious trouble because it's so unprofessional. Do not bite the bullet. If people insult you, personal attack you, you should really happy about it because you can politely ask the editor to remove such comment out from picture. And normally the editor will do it. To be honest, most probably the editor already screen through, filter this, you never see it. But just in case the editor, let it slip through, you can politely ask the editor, they have made this sentence in this, quote it as is a personal attack. So most probably I'll politely, respectfully request a more objective reviewer for our manuscript, thing like that. It happens to me before. So I just do it and then eventually become very easy. All right. So to conclude, right, I want to emphasize again on the Whiteside way, to structure the papers before you're doing experiment. I think it's a very powerful way. In fact, I do it by myself when I was a student, and now I'm as an advisor, I do it with my students. And get a title important, abstract important, of course, everything is important. And the most important one is your cover letter. If you have spent years of efforts to do your research and finally write the papers, and you do not want your paper is rejected at the editorial level just because your cover letter didn't convey your message carefully and effectively. This is the most overlooked piece of documents in the whole publication processes. And I hope from now on, you all really need to put in a lot of efforts on the cover letters and things like that. With this, I would like to thank your attention. I'm sorry I sit the whole thing by 1 minute. And I would like to answer any questions if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Lim, for very insightful and comprehensive lectures. Even you provide us many great examples, in detail, how to respond the reviewer, how to prepare everything. So I'm not to conclude your talk, but just try to briefly, how to say, summary, some point that you just delivered to us. Firstly, you started the presentations regarding to the motivations on preparing research article, why we are interested in writing, and then why we have to publish. And secondly, the most important thing, I guess, the Prof. Lim describe in detail about the paper anatomy, started from constructing the titles, the good titles, until to, how to say, preparing the cover letter. This the additional part that you all participants have to be prepared. One time you are dealing with the submission process. So all things that properly mentioned will be the great experience for all of you. One time you are preparing the article and then submitting your draft and then facing the review process. I guess I would like to have the sounds from participant. So please, very welcome to all participants. If you still have any questions or comment or suggestions due to the lectures that just delivered by Prof. Lim, you can raise your hand and open your microphone, or you can type your questions in the chat box as usual, and Prof. Lim will directly reply to your questions. Please.
Okay, from me.
Oh, silakan, Pak Tulus.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, Mr. JitKang. I always ask you about this.
No problem. No problem.
Okay, you told me that we have to take a break before, after we get some, take a break before we memperbaiki paper kita. Alright. So for how long we have to take a break before we send back our paper from the reviewer? I think I mean we can get the negative comment from the reviewers. Yes.
Sure. I think Pak Tulus, maybe I don't get it. You're asking me how long we should send our response
No,
back?
I mean, you talk us about before we send back to the reviewers, we have to take a break first, right? For
Yes,
I mean, for how long to take a break before we send back our paper?
No, normally when the editor send the email to ask for the to respond for the reviewer, right? They'll give us a windows, right? So normally you say you have to submit your response to the reviewer with a corrected manuscript before this day, right? So we already know normally it's been given 2 to 4 weeks for such a thing. So it actually quite a rush. But I guess when I say take a break is we do not want to get our emotion into the writing part, the respond part, right? Especially if the review, there's a lot of comments, right? And especially a lot of very nasty comments. So we need to take some time to really look through it and think about it, right? So it depends on how fast we can recover from it. Somebody can recover. So I have one student who get this and start crying nonstop and things like that. Then I also have students who like nothing happens. You can immediately doing it without too demotivated, right? But I guess the more important thing is after we have the response to the reviewer, all the authors should sit down again and read our response together and make sure we agree with the response together. Then if one person is very emotional, at least we have other control valve, people that can put in other, control of emotion there. So that's really important to have more than one person to respond to the reviewer comments. That means we have to involve our co-authors to come in together and look at the response to reviewer as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
but I mean, there's a time to respond.
Yeah. Ya,
Thank you.
ya Pak Tulus betul tadi Proplim menyampaikan biasanya saat review proses, I explain to bahasa. Saat review proses itu pada saat revisi hanya diberikan waktu yang singkat 2 sampai 4 minggu. Nah, tadi memang perlu waktu kita untuk sejenak merenungi, merefleksi apa itu yang disampaikan oleh reviewer komennya supaya kita tidak keliru merespon gitu ya. Kemudian membatasi emosi kita untuk terlibat terlalu banyak dalam nanti respon. Tentu harus dikerjakan cepat karena biasanya masa revisi itu hanya diberikan 2 sampai 4 minggu. Dan itu harus disubmit kembali ke jurnal artikelnya. Jadi bukan berarti take a break, Pak Tulus meninggalkan. No, not for vacation.
Happy holiday. Yeah, but one thing, my personal experience, I have this personal experience, especially if you publish theoretical hypothesis work that actually bring a controversy, a really new thing that people don't agree. There's a lot of people don't agree with me. Then the reviewer sometimes it can be very nasty. And I think it's really important for us to really take a break and really think about how we should respond to it. Right. Of course, it's not a big holiday. I guess the thing is we really need to give our time to breathe, prepare for it.
Yeah, I experienced similar problem. So one time we received the reviewer comment. Just we look at the comment, even though we didn't read carefully, we already panic, right?
Yeah.
And then I copy your way. So I just take it from my email and then I print it. Just put it.
Yes.
After 1 or 2 days, I just try to read carefully. Then we can more clear, to understand what the comment of the reviewer. So that's the meaning, not to leave for vacation or something. Otherwise, you rest on the time for submitting.
It's not like after you receive the reviewer, then you just directly bercuti 2 minggu.
Yeah.
Happen that way.
Already another participant, problem, Miss Arya.
Okay.
Aira, already raise hand. So please, you can open your microphone, please.
Hello, Prof. Lim.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
We had meet before at ACS Thailand, Bangkok on 2015.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. So some of the result you see it actually is from Boost, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
At Boost. Okay, problem. This is my first time I will write my research article, and honestly, I don't know how to start for this article. But my supervisor gave me time only 2 weeks to finish all that things. Do you have any suggestions for me? How can I start or how can I finish this research article in 2 weeks? Thank you.
Sure. I guess 2 weeks is really rush. Normally, I'll write my articles. I use about one month plus or 2 months sometimes, and it's not uncommon to write 3 months. I guess the fastest way for you to do it is like what I told you just what is way. You put in all your figures. Let's say you put in all your figures. What is your figures 1, figure 2, figure 3? You put it list down first. What is the figure that will be appear on your papers? Then you put in all the discussions underneath the paper. So now you have a structured paper with a flow of idea in between. Once you have all these things, then you include the references that you already read into each section associated to your discussion. Once you have all those things, then only you go back and write your introduction. Do not write your introduction first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
While you write all this, so even after 2 weeks, if you still haven't have the complete papers to show to your advisor, at least you have all the results been nicely arranged with the discussions and also the references for discussion. At least you can answer your advisor, I can't write in 2 weeks, but I have most of the paper already mapped out and worked out for you, right? Then of course, it will also buy you more time. Another 2 weeks maybe to finish.
Okay. Well, thank you, Prof. Lim, for your suggestion. I will try to do that.
For you.
Yeah, that's also my way how to write the research article. So start from the result, I do method, and the result, and after that, we go back to introductions, and then for the last thing, title and the abstract. All right. Good luck, Bu Aira, for your first research article. Yeah. At this moment, yes.
It will be a very exciting process for Arya.
Yeah, really black and blue, bro.
I guess we have one questions on the chat.
Oh yeah, from Pak Uripto, the lecturer from Kalimantan.
Yeah.
May I help you to read the question?
Sure.
Some journal limit us to write abstract in very short. For example, maximum number of word is around 250, but they suggest us to write the motivation and so on. Is there any trick?
Okay. This is always very challenging. The abstract I showed just now, we published in ACS Nano. So ACS Nano also restricted the abstract to, I think it's 150, it's even shorter. So, and normally they want motivation. So I guess you can only write in the first sentence, what motivate you to do this, right? I guess if a hypothesis, then you could directly explain, why you want to pursue this hypothesis. And if it's a methods, that means you report a results, then you explain, these results has been beneficial for the application of something. If you want to type your application, you can type your application, tie in with science. But the idea is you provide a motivation in the first sentence and only use one sentence to provide such a motivation. I know I'm not good at doing it as well, but normally nowadays, especially the top journal, even some of the journal have the words limits. That means they have even one figure is, how many words, another figure. The thing I can think about is Environmental Science and Technos by ACS. It's a very reputable, very good environmental related journal. Their figures, tables, all of them have words limit. So you just can't exceed everything. So it's become much more challenging. And to be honest with you, I am the worst person to answer this kind of question. Because if you check my publication, right, my paper is always very long. This year, I just got one paper accepted. The paper we wrote is 80 pages. And on request by the editor and reviewer, we cut it down to 40 pages. So we cut half. And even after I cut half, it's still a very, very long video. So we remove a lot of things to the supplemental information and supporting information. All right. Rito, I hope I answered your questions. Partially, of course.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Pak Uripto. Any other questions still? Please, before we close this session. Yeah, at the moment, Prof. Lim hasn't yet, share his great experiences, especially on, developing the introduction part, yeah, as well as the method and result part in the paper. Hopefully in the next occasions, we will have time to discuss more detail with him, especially for the newbie, yeah, for the ones who just started to write the research article. Yes, it is very challenging, but don't worry, it will be come to the end, in my opinion, yeah, with the great acceptance.
I guess the starting point is the most difficult one.
Yeah, that's right.
Start to write. The first day is the most painful, terrible experience. You can sit now, write 3 sentences for the whole day, and you just look at your screen and the 3 sentences coming out. Especially we have to acknowledge we are not English speaking. We are not, our native language is not English. So we have not only scientific barrier, we need to communicate barrier, but also language barrier we need to overcome. It's just take time to build out the momentum to write, right? So the more you write, the better, the more we write, the better we become. Right?
So practice make perfect, yeah, Prof?
Yeah. I guess one thing I want to make an advertisement for the next workshop. The next workshop on October will be on the graphical design and also copyright clearance. Especially nowadays, I know a lot of people are start writing review articles. So when it comes to review articles, you have to be very careful about the copyright, especially if you want to use other people's results or other people's images, then how should you ask copyright clearance for the images? How should you cite other people's and things like that? Then I will go through it. Then I will also go through some freeware. So image processing nowadays become very, very expensive. So I'll try to recommend a software that we can use for that purposes. Then I'll use that software to process a few images, like a tutorial, then we can do the tutorial together. Then of course, I also explain how to import and export these images at very high resolutions in Microsoft Word and also Microsoft PowerPoint. So in order to transfer the images, and when we transfer the images from one software to another software, how we retain the DPI, the resolution for it without losing it. Because sometimes when you draw the picture can be very nice in the software we draw, but once we import into Word document and convert to become PDF, it becomes very ugly and low resolution. And what happens and how could we fix those things? Those will be the next presentation. So next presentation will be a lot of things that we need to do.
Yeah. More hands-on, hands-on activity. And yeah, I do agree. This part is actually one of the crucial part on preparing research article. Since the representations of our data is also the most important thing. How we represent the data in the good figures, for example, in the good graphics and so on. So everyone, if you don't have any questions, I would like to close this session. So before we close the session, Prof. Lim here, we provide already the e-certificate for your great contributions and an exceptional lecture for today. We send this for you with many sincere thanks. Thank you very much, Prof. Lim, for your great contribution.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all of you for coming. Thank you. Yeah.
And for the all participants here, we enclose the attendance link. You can fulfill your identity here through this link, https://bit.ly/WCP 2022/2. And here, the flyer for the next seminar, I will circulate this flyer by next week, for all participants who are interested in to join the series, of the workshop on preparing the research article. Please kindly join us again, yeah, on October 5, 2022 on Wednesday. So don't miss it for the schedule, and we provide already the link for your registration. And yeah, as Prof. Lim mentioned, we will have more hands-on activity on preparing graph and so on using some software. So we encourage you to install paint.net. Sorry, my cog getting worse. And then you can easily download it. Yeah, this is the link that you can copy for downloading the PaintNet. It will be easier for you to join later on for the workshop. Yeah, by the end, I guess you will have like this. The PaintNet. Yeah, this is free, totally free. How to say? You just need to install on your computer. So when the workshop third is conducted, yeah, you just need to open this, and then probably will give us a guidance, yeah, how to operate one by one. I will copy the link for all of you, and then actually all materials will be posted in the email, yeah, to all participants together with the lecture material and your e-certificate. So I guess that's all the informations for third workshop that will be conducted on Wednesday, 5th October 2022. So again, Prof. Lim, I would like to extend my gratitude for your great support on today's workshop. And I really wish you a great day, and very hope to seeing you again on October. Yeah, and to all participants, thank you very much for your great attendance. Yeah, hopefully the lecture that delivered today can give you more how to say motivations. Yeah, and also experiences, and also many tips in my opinion. Yeah, and many strategy. Therefore, you will be more ready, yeah, to face any kind of possibilities one time you submit your draft articles. So I guess I can close this session. And a very good afternoon, everyone. See you again on October. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
For the lectures materials, it will be sent together with the e-certificate to all of your email. So please kindly fulfill the attendance link. Yeah, we will send the lecture note as well as the e-certificate for all of you. Thank you. After you fulfill the e-certificate, you may leave. And thank you again for your great participation.
Thank you. Can we leave now?
Yeah, sure. After you fulfill the attendance link, you may leave, please.
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And sorry for very belated schedule. Yeah, since yeah we have some questions, but yeah, hopefully it helpful for all of you. Yeah, thank you, and see you again, Pak Tulus, on the third workshop. Ya, sama-sama. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you, Bu Aira, Ibu Mia. Ya. Please kindly share ya the informations for the third workshop. Yeah. We will circulate the further informations. The Zoom will be closed very soon. So make sure all attendants already fulfill the attendance link. All of you can join us again for the third seminar. Yeah, I